Hello, welcome. So today we are live and it's going to be a very special video. What do we have here? We have Blender, and you can see I have 5 different versions of Blender on my desktop, on my computer, and this is for a very good reason. So today it's going to be in French, Spanish, and English. Entonces, bienvenue, welcome, bienvenidos. J'ai reçu la question il y a quelques jours de quel est le meilleur render engine, which is the best render engine. This is the question today. And entonces la pregunta es, ¿cuál es el mejor sistema de render hoy en día? No todos los sistemas de render están disponibles con Blender, so not all render engines are working with Blender, but nonetheless we have many options. We have a lot of options. Donc pour Blender, on a plein d'options en fait actuellement. Et bon, ça c'est en direct parce que des fois je préfère faire les choses en direct. Bien sûr, il y aura peut-être plein d'erreurs dans ce que je vais faire ou dans ce que je vais dire. Entonces va a ser en vivo y vamos a empezar a ver, el tema de hoy es pues justamente qué pasa con los sistemas de render disponibles y qué hay. Entonces es bastante, pues algo que podemos hacer. So something we can do to start answering the question. And in fact, we are going to see that very quickly. We won't have access to the best render engine, and I'm going to show you people why. Entonces vamos a ver, on va aller voir tout de suite. Best render engine 221. So okay, so the typical list. And okay, generally the names you should know, the main competitors in the render engine section. So the most famous one generally is V-Ray. I've been using V-Ray almost 20 years ago. I was using V-Ray and Mental Ray with 3D Studio Max. Back in the day, it was still a pretty good software, evolving very quickly. It was like the top, the best 3D modeler and 3D software back then, before Blender. In fact, I think 3D Max was the best. But anyway, render engines. So V-Ray, Mental Ray, Corona, Arnold, Redshift, Lumion, Keyshot, Luxcore, CycleX. Well, Eevee, I won't really talk about Eevee because it's not really what we're looking for today, but well, Eevee. Okay, so the list, this is one of the list. And Renderman, Octane, obviously, one of the most famous one now. And but let's go see in some lists. Well, this is already a video on some list. Okay, some list. But anyway, the thing is, the fact is that the software that is considered the best render engine, donc le programme qui est actuellement considéré le meilleur système de render est tout simplement Lumion. Entonces, el mejor sistema de render considerado hoy en día realmente compitiendo al mejor nivel por sus capacidades es Lumion, which is here, Lumion 3D. So that's nice to know. It's not that I've never used Lumion. I've seen some people using Lumion and renders. And well, let's go have a look at the website Lumion. Okay, here we go. So this is the official website. Okay, great. So Lumion, it's considered the best render engine. So donc à la question quel est le meilleur système de render actuellement disponible, en général la réponse est Lumion. J'ai fait mes recherches. Je crois que je suis assez d'accord. Alors Lumion, ok. Entonces Lumion es considerado el mejor sistema de render actualmente disponible. Entonces, aquí vamos a ver un fenómeno. So we're going to see something very specific. Lumion is developed especially, and we can see it on the website, for architecture. Okay? So at first you would say, well, that's not a problem. We can use Lumion for jewelry rendering. If it's considered the best, I should use Lumion. Of course. Well, we should. Then you go to the product page, overview. Okay, here. And well, let's go directly to buy online. Buy online here. Buy online. Okay, see options. And okay. So, here we are. Entonces, aquí estamos. Donc, nous sommes ici avec Lumion. Donc, comme je viens de dire, le système de render considéré le meilleur au monde actuellement disponible. And what do we see? We see the price tag of Lumion. And that's why I said very quickly that Lumion is developed for architecture, rendering in fact. And you can see the price. $1,500 euros, which is even higher. it's more. It's like almost well, 1.7 more. So 1 in dollars, that would be 1.7 more. Yeah, nice. It's like $2,500 for one license. Yeah. It's the best software. It's also one of the most expensive render engine. But okay, so now price tag. Would you pay, or if you have the pro version which has content library and all for architects, you're going to pay like $4,000 for a render engine. Okay, so nice. We are generally around here. We are Blender users, and Blender is free. Cycles is free. Eevee is free. LuxCore is free. Octane is free. Renderman is free, and they're pretty good render engines, honestly said. And that's why today I'm going to talk about all the free render engines available for Blender, and we're going to use it because I was going to record a normal tutorial. It is going to be a tutorial today. We're going to see the 5 render engines that I have access to. I think we could have access to Corona, but I won't be using Corona for Blender today, at least, maybe some other day, but we are going to use Octane for Blender, LuxCore, and Cyclex, and Renderman, and Prorender. I forgot Prorender from AMD. It's actually not the best one, but it's very interesting to know how they work. Honestly, that's why today's video I said is going to be very special, because it's, well, I'm going to talk about all the free render engines, and we're going to talk about the differences about those render engines. So the answer, what's the best render engine, is Lumion. That's true in general. So entonces, en realidad, Lumion sí es el mejor. Sí, es muy probable que sí. Pero es también uno de los más caros, ¿no? Entonces, pues, cuando dije que era para arquitectos, no es por nada. Para un despacho internacional de arquitectos, €4,000 es un cacahuate, es un grano de arena, hay que entenderlo. Para un estudio de arquitectos bien instalado, funcionando a nivel internacional en proyectos, no sé, haciendo edificios en Dubai, por ejemplo, o en China, donde ahorita están de los mayores proyectos arquitectónicos a nivel mundial, honestamente $4,000 no es nada, ¿ok? Es lo que cuesta mi pluma o mi taza de café, honestamente. Pero, pues no es el caso de la gran mayoría de nosotros. Además, en general, pues esos son programas para empresas. So this is a software for an architecture studio at international level, and $4,000 won't be, well, like I said, it's a peanut. It's nothing. It's an investment because you're going to buy the best render system with support, with libraries, with a lot of assets, with a lot of things going on for $4,000. But like I said, by example, for my business as a jeweler or a jewelry designer, a jewelry maker, I won't be paying that kind of money for a render engine. I'm not making that much money with renders. I'm making money with designs and making jewels. So $4,000 for a render engine, that's not for me. But that's okay. We are not the target at all. I'm not the target of this product. Lumion is for architects. Donc Lumion, c'est pour les architectes. Donc évidemment, ça a un prix de liste de niveau entreprise. But on my side here, as a jewelry designer, I do use Design, which is a software, a 3D software. It's French, is one of the best software for jewelry makers, jewelry designers, and the entire jewelry business. And the problem is that, well, also for many people, it's considered expensive because generally a license is going to cost you around $6,000. Well, we have some options starting at $2,500, depending on the countries and the size of the business and how many licenses you need. Design is a software. It has also rendering options with Deep Image, by example, which is very specialized for jewelers and jewelry makers. So I do use very expensive business software. Design, I use it every day. V10 is just an amazing piece of software. I will keep making videos with this software because it deserves all this, well, marketing or talking about the tree design, because the software is amazing, but also the price tag is also amazing. But that's normal. I mean, if you have very powerful tools, you are going to have also a very powerful price tag, and you should expect that, okay? Donc, ma 3 Design version 10, c'est juste pour aussi commenter, moi aussi j'utilise des programmes qui sont chers, mais ben, je les utilise tous les jours. Donc, c'est des investissements. Entonces, como estaba comentando, yo también sí utilizo programas muy caros, pero por ejemplo, no invertiría $4,000 en un sistema de render. Porque, pues, no necesito tanto poder. Necesito resultados, pero los puedo obtener con programas, de hecho, mucho más accesibles o gratuitos. Pero we're going to keep seeing the options. So software, that was just to explain why I would invest in some tools like Tree Design. I'm very glad to be a Tree Design user, representative, teacher, and a business using Tree Design. So the investment is totally worth it. But like I was saying, I would not invest $4,000 in a render engine, even if it's the best. Okay, so Now, the thing is, all right. Okay, so we're going to, well, first I'm going to go to the results because like I said, I prepared some of this, obviously. So here we are. So like I said, today's, well, actually tutorial, because we are going to see how they worked. I am going to talk about, I'm going to talk about how they work, how to set up. I made a scene, I made a jewelry scene, so we're going to see this actually. So this is the result. This is the result. It's a ring that I designed a couple of weeks using 3Design. Okay, so this is with Cycles, this is with LuxCore with the CPU, this is LuxCore on the GPU, this is Octane. So Octane is on one single GPU. I do have two GPUs. Luckily, that's good because I do a lot of renders. That's Prorender AMD. So it does work on NVIDIA cards also because it works with OpenCL. So this is GPU, and this is Renderman. And actually, the whole concept of making this tutorial about render engines available for Blender started because I wanted to test, and I was very happy. In fact, this entire render, the scene with the fabric on the floor and the wraps there, the texture is homemade, everything's homemade, the design is homemade, the entire scene, the HDR also I used, I think it's one of my it's part of my library. It's not a free HDR, it's from my pictures. Like I say almost in every video, I do take pictures all over the place for HDR and textures because I do sell and make assets. So obviously it's commercially necessary to have my own textures, and that's why people like to buy my assets or follow my tutorials, because I use my own material. Okay, so this is that. So I started with Renderman for Blender because Renderman for Blender is available. A new version I think came out a month ago or something like that. So I was intrigued because I was reading on the forum and on Facebook that people were talking about Renderman, and we all know, or we should know, Renderman is from Pixar, and that's the software they use for Toy Story or movies like that. And well, when you hear that Renderman is available for Blender and you use Blender every day, well, you will want to, well, at least have a look at Renderman working on Blender. And, well, then starts, okay, so I have here, I made those different renders. And actually, well, like I was saying, the first this is my first render using Renderman for Blender with Blender. But you're going to very soon understand that to install a specific render engine, yes, you are going to need specific Blender versions. And that's when it gets a bit crazy, maybe. Because why? What happens here? So my favorite render engine, which I consider the best, and I'm going to explain why, in fact, for us or for me, or why you should consider LuxCore. LuxCore is, I think, the best render engine, even if many famous people or famous tutorials or famous blenders or many people say that LuxCore is the slowest render engine. I widely disagree on that. That's wrong. They just don't know how to use LuxCore. That's why I make tutorials using LuxCore, and some people literally say you're losers if you're using LuxCore, but it's the other way around. It's like, if you don't know how to use or set the defaults, because I mean, you can't compare render engines. They're all different for many reasons. So you can compare, but you should use And I use, by example, LuxCore because the Caustics are still the fastest and the best there are for free. That's a known fact. Octane makes Caustics, but they're not as good and not that fast. Renderman also has Dispersion and Caustics, a bit also, but you can't tweak the light tracing as well as in LuxCore. Cycles doesn't have Caustics. Dispersion can be faked, we all know that. We have many options. And Prorender from AMD has Caustics, but also you can't tweak them a lot. So I'm still saying the best render option for us is LuxCore. And it's fairly, we're going to see today that using LuxCore is really nice. It's very close to Cycles. It's very well implemented. It's pretty intuitive. It's also starting to have a big library for architects, because also LuxCore is very good for architects. But also for jewelers, honestly, LuxCore is one of the best. And the speed is good because we can have very high quality realistic, because what's the thing? LuxCore is unbiased. You know, it's really physical render, a physical render. So it's one of the most accurate render engines available, and it's free, people, it's free. So now, also, so you know, I am a LuxCore backer. I mean, I do make apportations to LuxCore. Well, for very simple reasons. I make money with LuxCore, and it's a wonderful piece of software, and they totally deserve that people like me using LuxCore, promoting LuxCore, well, make their donations. And I also make donations to Blender, also through the selling assets through the Blender market. So that's actually the Blender market is a very nice way for us, people who create assets using Blender and selling assets for Blender, to give 5% on the sales. And that's, well, it starts to be a nice amount of money for Blender also. So we're starting to, well, all the work, all that kind of community, people using software and making money with softwares that are free, and the donation system, they do work. They do work. So we're not going to invest $4,000 in Lumion. I won't. Maybe someday, because it's always nice to have amazing piece of softwares. But honestly, and that's why V-Ray, let's go to V-Ray. You can have V-Ray. Okay, so it's from the Chaos group. Oh, everybody knows that product. Actually, and well, there is a standalone, and that's the problem with V-Ray. It's available for Blender, but it's fairly old. So I'm not even considering V-Ray for Blender. That's a bit sad, but V-Ray is not that expensive. It's like $700, something like that, and I think it's not subscription based. So the next problem you're gonna have when you want to choose a render engine, Lumion, you can buy your license, and but even then you need to pay an annual maintenance for your license, which is also very expensive because it's a type of subscriptions. And as you know, it's very common now in the, well, tech world to have softwares with subscription only. And honestly, because I'm from the generations who, well, started using computers, programming games and all of that, using 3D, making music with computers, because yes, I do all that with the computer. I hate the subscription system. I just hate that. I would never subscribe to these softwares. And I'm very happy that in my work structure, I don't need to subscribe to any software. Because it's like, renting a car. It's never your car. Well, and even when you rent a car in some leasing systems, at the end you can buy the car if you want. That's great, actually. That's pretty great. But with softwares, you can't anymore. You're just paying monthly or yearly subscriptions, and the software is never yours. So when you stop paying, well, all you've done with that software, you can't even open it. You can work on that anymore. That would be very bad for my business, by example, because sometimes a client needs something that I did maybe 5 years ago. But if I did it using 3Design or Blender, I still can open it and work it again and change it and make it more actual. So the subscription system is the worst that had happened to the entire tech world, software world, people world, to the world. Subscriptions, it's the best way to make money, but it's not the best way to help, to have a good client relation. Actually, the hate, it's like the microtransactions in video games. The dude who invented that, it's a great PR marketing genius, but that generates a lot of hate. There's a lot of hate out there in video games, in softwares, because you have to, it's like we have to play, we have to use 3D softwares, we have to use Office, we have to use very famous softwares for our everyday work and business and personal life. But you can't own the software anymore. And now you are a slave to the money makers, and people hate that. That's why, that's something that's very bad. Enslaving people for making money. So yeah, there's a lot of hate out there, and that's why I'm here. Hello, because that's why I want to talk about free options, freedom. We all want freedom, yeah, you know, because it's not just because we don't have money. It's not that much the problem. The problem is, okay, I make money, but how much of my freedom do I lose to make money? So if you want to be a slave to money, you know, many songs talk about that. Well, that's great. That's your decision. But I think that making money should not enslave you too much. Obviously, we are slaves to clients, to people asking us to make the work. We are some kind of slave because we need to obey the client's rule and wishes and orders and indications, because if you're not a good client people, well, the client is not going to like your work, and you won't have much more work anymore. So the concept of the entire tutorial of today is free render engines for Blender and comparing actually the quality, the feeling, because I think I've seen some videos about the speed, you know, the fastest. What's the fastest render engine? So even with all the disclaimers that you want, it's a very bad idea to compare the speed of render engines. Because I've seen some tutorials about the speed of render engines, and the concept was that, well, let's use the default settings. Let's just install the render engine and load the scene and run the scene and run the render engine. Okay, you can't do that because, by example, in Luxcore, and that's why Luxcore came out at last, the slowest. I was going to make a video called "What is the slowest render engine?" And obviously it's not Luxcore. We're going to see today that obviously it's not Luxcore. But also because my concept and the idea and what I want to do with my channel and the way I want to grow, keep growing, because just today I reached 6,500 subscribers. So thanks to you all. It's not a lot. I mean, the channel is still very small. But So I was going to make fun of some videos or people I've seen making videos about what's the fastest render engine. And like I said, even with all the disclaimers that you want, you can't just throw a scene at a render engine and then throw that same scene to another render engine and just say that the default settings are going to allow you to compare the speeds. It does not work. And we saw that very clearly in a video a couple of weeks ago. After 2 minutes of the video, I was like, yes, you can compare the samples and the noise of the render. Let's go back to this. So my renders, just to show the speed, this is Cycles. This is the fastest, I think, of this row, but let's compare the times. This is 1 minute and some seconds, CyclesX, LuxCore on the CPU only with the best algorithm, which is the Bi-Directional tracing, which is the most realistic option. It's the slowest. Okay, on the CPU only, and my CPU is good, but it's old. My GPUs are way newer than the CPU. It's the next piece of hardware I need to change is, and yes, I will buy, if I can, a Threadripper. Maybe, just maybe. Anyway, or a new Intel 10 or whatever. Anyway, CPU is what I need to change. So on CPU, 8 minutes. That's great for this thing. Then we have on GPU and CPU 4 minutes. It's half the time, but that's not bidirectional. That's path tracing. Octane, which is fast. But Octane has one problem. The free version, the free tier of Octane for Blender allows you only one GPU. So this one took 20 minutes. Okay, so that's already a bit of bad news. Okay, and yes, we are talking to discuss the good side and the bad sides of all of this, because there are, well, here, Octane is amazing. We're going to talk about each. I'm going to show in Blender. That's why I've installed the 5 different versions here. These are 5 different versions of Blender, because every render engine has a specific version needed to make a render engine work, and we are going to talk about that later. So Octane, well, 20 minutes. That's a bit sad, but why? It's only one GPU. And yeah, many designers, yeah, we do have at least 2 GPUs. Most have 3 or even 4. It's very normal because it's a computer made for designing with a lot of speed. Okay, so 20 minutes. Prorender, 2 minutes. Okay, Prorender is pretty nice, but honestly, working with Prorender in Blender, it's not so good. We'll see that. And Renderman, so here I won't talk about the time. This one took 1 hour, 40 minutes. But, and even the gemstones, they're a bit blurred. But what happens here? I really liked the result. The way, so now what you should consider between render engines is the features, and that's something I already started talking about a moment ago, is that the features. So like I said, for jewelry rendering, there's one thing. First is dispersion, is the white light that becomes the different colors, the rainbow colors, the dispersion, because the wavelength changes. So when it goes through glass or gemstone, you're going to see some colors. You're going to the white light is dispersing on the exit of the gemstone. So you're going to see some colored sparkles here and there, especially in diamonds, obviously, which is the queen or the king or the star of the show. It's diamonds. So we need that for the render. So well, basically all Okay, Prorender does dispersion, Renderman does dispersion, Octane makes dispersion too, LuxCore makes one of the best dispersion, honestly, with Octane. Octane and LuxCore make some of the best dispersion. We have to know that. So Octane or LuxCore for dispersion. And then, well, Cyclex, Cycles, Eevee, and so, they're not making true dispersion. You can fake with nodes. You can, there are actually videos about that. I will maybe, but there are many ways. I have my way to fake dispersion in the cycles, but it's fake. So it's not realistic. It's realistic-ish. So if you want realism, you need to take CycleX to the side. But if you want speed, then yes, we are going to work with cycles. So, okay, that features. Then the other feature, Caustics. So Caustics, for many people, actually here on screen, here, this one is rendered with LuxCore, here, this one on the left. And we can see the Caustics. And these are metallic caustics. It's one of the few, and I'm not just talking about free softwares here, among every render engines around that makes metallic caustics. Is the refraction from the light on metals, and it happens not that much in real life. But if you have a jewel in sunlight, in direct sunlight, and you're taking pictures, and if you're an active jeweler and jewelry maker and designer, and yeah, you're taking pictures of your jewel to social media, to your website and all that, so you do take pictures of jewels in real life. And someday you will try to take a picture of a jewel in direct sunlight. And you're going to see that it's going to shine in very distinctive manners. And that's because the caustics, especially because the sunlight is making very strong bounces on the jewel. And it's giving the entire picture and the entire scene. And actually you can see that it's more lively, it's more interesting. So that's what I want to do with my videos, with all my tutorials and all that. Yes, I will keep making unedited tutorials, very long tutorials, you know, like 1 hour, 2 hours. Some people say that it's not good to make such long tutorials, but this is me, this is my channel, and this is the way my channel started growing, because the first factor, I want to make interesting videos, interesting tutorials, and to make something interesting, you need time. It takes a lot of time because we need to talk about many things, and I'm in favor of more knowledge, more development. So this requires more time, more tutorials to be more interesting. That's what I care about, because otherwise, actually, when I don't make videos, and I haven't been making videos that much lately, well, first because I have a lot of designs to make for clients. That's good for me. I have a lot of work, so I don't have that much time to make tutorials. But then I'm just simply trying to find new ways to make interesting tutorials and subject and themes. So here we are with so we're going to go, okay, so by example, Octane. Let's start with Octane. So first here we need to run the Octane server. So yes, Octane, let's go with Octane. Let's go with Octane. So Octane for Blender is not very easy to install, because I already made a tutorial about that. Actually, let's find Octane Jewellery. We're going to find a couple of tutorials. Okay, this one is mine. It's not too bad. I'm in 3rd position. So, okay, this tutorial, if you don't know this tutorial, go check that one out. Octane Renderer Blender Edition. I explain how to use it and how to install it. But first, how to install it. And there are many steps. And it's not so easy to find the link to the free version, where to subscribe to your Atelier account and to install. And then you're going to install this version, which is here, Blender Octane. So let's run Blender Octane. And you need the Octane server, which makes the render on the server of Octane, somewhere, I don't know where in the world, maybe in Los Angeles, I don't know where they're based, in Poland maybe, I don't know, in China maybe, I don't know where they're from, maybe in Hungary, Turkey, I don't know, somewhere, but not on your computer. The data is going to be sent somewhere. So okay, so here we are. I'm going to open the scene, and we're going to talk. So this is the scene. So the result of that is this one. Okay. So here we can see the dispersion, also amethyst and tourmalines, obviously the diamonds. I used real life, obviously real life values for IOR, for all of that. You know that I do. This is good, but 20 minutes. But we're going to see, because also when you want to compare render engines, well, the first thing that you're going to see is that, well, the materials. Well, if I make the material with Cycles and then I want to make the same scene in Octane, I need to rework all the materials. And that's why there's always an issue comparing the speed of a render engine, because if you know the render engine, you know which shader is best for your render engine, because you know, and that's not optimization. That's very wrong to say that that's optimization. That's just basic knowledge of the render engine. So the problem is, if we're going to compare render engines, we do need some knowledge about each render engine, because it's like people. We all have favorite foods, favorite habits, favorite activities. So if it's like, if you want to be with someone, well, you just can't default your behavior with everyone. You need a specific behavior. You need to know the people. That's why some people are friends and some people are not friends. That's why some people are lovers and some people are not lovers. They're friends. Because you can have the same behavior depending on what you're doing and with who you're doing that. So with render engines, it's a bit the same. So trying to default the usage of a render engine won't make a very good comparison between render engines. So what we like, the best thing in Octane is the materials, the nodes. So some people don't really get that. You're gonna see that when you use Octane. Octane is, let's say, very similar to Cycles and Luxcore. Okay, something that I am going to compare in speed and that I want to talk about is the speed of usage. How is it to use each specific render engine? So I do like Octane. Actually, I've made a very successful asset for Octane, which is the Ultimate Gemstones color procedural asset there. But it is a bit slow. And obviously I'm talking about the free Octane Blender because it's just one GPU, but also because it renders on the Octane server. So the communication between the server and your computer makes that the actualization, when you move the view, see, it's a bit slowish. Okay, and it's not the worst. We are going to see that, honestly, the worst one is Prorender. But maybe that's because I don't have an AMD system. Honestly, I would not. But anyway, I'm going to talk about the feeling of using each specific render engine. Okay, so here we're with Octane. So first, honestly, the viewport actualization is pretty slow. Now, Octane is one of the best render engine when you talk about the quality of the nodes for your materials. Because let's just have a look at how big the universal, which would be the PBR in Cycles, it's very big, but for a good reason. You can tweak all that in Octane, and that makes that the output of the material, when we see at the fabric, by example, like my green fabric on the floor, that it's not fully procedural. That fabric is from one of my pictures. Actually, we can see the picture. Let's go see what I used to create the scene. Okay, so for the floor, that's the image. Okay, it's this fabric. Okay, so it's here, obviously tweaked for the colors, and that's what I prefer in Octane. So that's why I do make renders using Octane, and I do recommend Octane a lot. I would. Maybe I will buy Octane someday, maybe. But I still prefer LuxCore, and I'm going to explain each time why I think... Well, LuxCore we're going to see later, because I think I will use LuxCore at the end, because it's my favorite. But LuxCore is a bit faster in the view and in the viewport. Obviously, LuxCore uses the CPU and the GPUs, all your GPUs. So, but maybe if I buy Octane, I think Octane is not too expensive. Shop, let's go see. Yeah, but it's a rent. But also, yeah, that's okay. So that's why I checked already. I remembered you can't buy Octane. You must subscribe. You must rent Octane. Like I said, no, renting is not for me. I pass. So. Well, I will never have access to Octane with all my GPUs. Too bad for me. But well, let's come back to it. Okay, so the nodes. So that's the floor. Let's go to the diamonds first. Diamonds. Okay, so let's select the ring. So my ring has the materials and diamond. So the diamond here is very simple. I do have some color ramp, because that's just for me for an artistic effect right here, plugged over the diamonds, even in Octane. Obviously I can remove that if I want fully white diamonds, but in real life diamonds are always a bit yellowish, grayish, bluish, reddish sometimes, more like yellowish anyway, but grayish. So that's why I've put some colors over the diamonds. And it's very easy. That's the IOR here, and that's basically all you need. Through the entire universal shader material, which is huge, you just need to tweak, well, metallic to 0, specular to 1, and then here, well, all that part for the colors, the color ramp, that's something you should not do. I do it for my own reasons. Okay, so now the dispersion. Here on, okay, no, sorry, the ring. Okay, then the gold. The gold is also just one metallic, no roughness at all, no sheen, and smoothed. Okay, bevel smooth effects. What softwares do have that? Renderman has that. LuxCore does not have that. Cycles has that. Octane has that. But I think the bevel node is coming, or is it already? I think LuxCore almost has it, but I'm not sure, we'll check. But Octane has it, and that's what I like in Octane. We have dispersion and we have the smooth bevel effect through the material, okay? And making the materials is really intuitive. It works because every characteristic you can find tutorials, you can find in the forums, and you can understand when you need to change the numbers you need to put there. So that's always a good point in favor. Render engine that has a lot of material, of manual explanations of the numbers, that's very important. The best ones is Cycles, Octane, and LuxCore, no doubt. LuxCore has a wiki about tweaking the materials. Cycles, well, has the entire community of Blender and the forums and Blender artists and all of that, and all the tutorials you can find. But Octane and Luxcore also have quite much explanations about the materials, and that's why I really enjoyed learning using Octane, because it's doable and pretty quickly. If you know how to use Cycles, and that's the same with Cycles, Luxcore, and Octane. They're very similar to the nodes. If you know one, you will know how to tweak the numbers and what to do in the other softwares. Okay, so goal is very simple. It's just no roughness and totally metallic. And also because it's white, we don't need the dielectric RGB settings because sometimes it's used there. It's harder to find the numbers there for colored metals. Okay, on the amethyst, well, also that's very simple. Just the IOR there and the color. The color here, I also used a color ramp for the color of that gemstone, and it has some dispersion turned on for that IOR. Okay, and garnets, well, originally there were tourmalines, then I think that became garnets, but it's like a rose, red rose type of gemstone, a semi-precious gemstone on the sides, and this is also very similar to the amethyst. There I just copy and paste and change the colors, and obviously the IOR is a bit different for the garnet. So we can see the node settings in Octane, they're very easy. We do have the smooth effect on the edges through the materials, and that's great. Something very important in each render engine, the lights. Okay, the light system changes a lot. First, the HDR and the tweakings you can do and the nodes you can use on the world environment settings. In Luxcore and in Cycles, they're not the same, even if they're very close softwares. So imagine with Octane. In Octane, there's something very different for the lights. Let me show here. So the settings. I have 3 lights in my scene. Area light, but it's a mesh light. That's something that I already explained in some tutorial. The mesh lights are starting to be present almost everywhere in many systems, because it's just a mesh and it has an emission material. So here, that's my light, which is a square. They're squared lights, like a real light, but it's a mesh light because the material gets the emission power. So here we have a texture emission to the emission of that universal material for that light. So actually, if you want to change the power of each light, you need to create different materials. Here I have 3 different lights with different powers, and I have 3 different light materials. So that's specific to Octane, by example. I think it's pretty good, but I prefer a real light system, not just mesh lights. And in Octane, we need mesh lights with emission textures. So that makes a lot of tweaking problems, okay? And so that's for the lights in Octane. Then we have the environment. So here in Octane, we do have the nodes. We can load the HDR, and we do have a texture from the environment. And this is pretty nice because you get a very nice tweaking options on the environment HDR. Much like in Cycles. In Cycles, you control a lot of nodes on the environment, on the world nodes, and you can tweak all that. In Octane, you can also do that. So that brings a bit back the problem that we need mesh lights, but on the other side, the environment HDR is very easy to change, to tweak, to work on. like the colors. In LuxCore, we'll see later, and that's one of the things that I don't like, but it's because it's more physically based, and physically you have a sky or an HDR dome, and you can't change much of that in LuxCore. In Octane we can, in Cycles we can, in Renderman we can also, in Prorender I don't remember, but we'll take a look at that a bit later. So Octane is amazing. By example, the ground, the floor there, the fabric, let's go take a look here, has a displacement node, because obviously I did a very jewelry oriented render, because that's the channel is all about. And I wanted the floor with a very realistic texture of fabric. There's another version of the render which you might like. Well, this was the first version using Renderman with a reflective floor, which is a very common jewelry setting, but not white, a bit colored. It was pretty nice. Then I made another version of the floor. It was more like a type of leather. I liked that one already, but then I wanted something more colorful, more contrast, more artistically expressive. This is a bit too conservative, classic render. Okay, so that's why we have that, and what I wanted very soon was to have displacement on the floor. Really something, just not, like I said, I did not want it to make the tests using just this. It was not enough. I was planning to do that, but while I was developing and researching the renders and the free renders for Blender, and then making that for jewelry, like the question is, what's the best render engine? Like I said, it's Lumion, but it costs $4,000. So go ahead if you can buy it. Like I said, maybe one day I will buy it. And you should not get a illegal license. Please don't do that. You should never do that. So that's why we're always here talking about legal, free software that work at professional grade. And by example, Octane is at a pro level. The Octane for Blender is totally usable at a pro level. And if you want more power, you can subscribe to Octane and get the full license and work with all your GPUs. That's the only the downside, but that's logical. And it's a fair offer. We have a fully free Octane option. This one is fully free, legal, licensed by Auteuil. You need to have an Auteuil account to get this version for Blender, but it's worth it. It's totally worth it. You can do a very professional work using Octane for Blender. It's one of the best available. But I prefer LuxCore because of the caustics. Here we're lacking, even actually if in this scene we're going to see that I did not make the work to really need caustics, to be fairer between render engines. But anyway, the displacement, if we look at the displacement, obviously the floor has a bump, the fabric has a bump map, but it also has a displacement. And that makes that very slight quality touch on the fabric, okay? Because it makes the shadows and the edges better than just the bump. We should all know that. I hope you know that. If you don't know that, you need to study displacement maps. Many now in many softwares, and like in Cycles, in LuxCore 2, and here in Octane, we have a displacement node which makes a geometrical effect on the mesh. It displaces the faces of your mesh thanks to the node, and you don't need the modifier anymore. Here my modifiers, I do have, okay, I do have all, I even have, but that's another displacement from another texture. If you want to see what that displacement, okay, I do have a displacement modifier, but that's the one that makes those small waves And then also the big waves, they're made with a displacement modifier. But that's not the subject of today. Anyway, but the displacement node, and that's render Octane, that's Octane, works very well using the displacement node. Here, texture, you just have the image that goes to that texture displacement. You set the height here and some levels and all that, very easy, and you just connect that to the displacement node here. And at first I was connecting here to the displacement, which is the purple circle there, but that's for cycles by example. So there's a slight difference there, which you won't necessarily find online in the manuals. Okay, so well, basically I think that's all I had to talk. I'm going to talk about the material nodes for each software. And also, wait. No, the render settings. Okay, so here's something very important, and also why to explain why this render took 20 minutes. Well, first, it took 20 minutes because it only uses one GPU. The others uses both my GPUs and the CPU. Okay, so that's one thing. Obviously, with the 2 graphic cards, it's almost, yeah, it is basically twice as fast. So it would take like 10 minutes with both GPUs. So Octane render is pretty fast, but it's not the fastest. But like I said, I don't choose my render engine based just on speed. First thing that I need, like I said, the features, dispersion, caustics, and things like that. But then the other things that is very important is the speed of the previews. That's where the speed is important. So I don't know how fast is V-Ray on viewport updates and all of that. I know very well Cycles and Luxcore, and by example, Luxcore on viewport updates is fast. It's good to work with Luxcore. Here, Octane is not my favorite render engine in Blender because the viewport update is a bit laggish, is a bit slowish. And so that's generally why when I wake up and let's make an amazing render today, I don't run to Octane. No. I generally run to Cycles because it's the fastest free option available. We could use eCycles, which is an add-on, but it's paid. So even if it's very cheap, because I think it's just like a couple of dollars, so we could, I could, but I don't, because all the updates, as you know, I update very fast. And actually I am using Blender 3.0 and CycleX, which is already, it's really faster than Cycles as it was before. CycleX is faster. But anyway, so the viewport update speed, and I'm glad to know that Luxcore is really good at viewport updates. We'll see later why yes or why not, and what to do and what not. But here, well, Octane is pretty fast. Yeah, it's fast. Also the renders, Octane makes very high quality renders for jewelry, honestly, because it has dispersion in the gemstone. It does make some caustics. And okay, so obviously here the kernel type, the normal one is path tracing. So path tracing, we have that also in Luxcore, which is a path tracer, and also in Cycles, obviously. But then we have the PMC, and let's go to the internet to remember what PMC means. Octane PMC. PMC Population Monte Carlo. That's the acronym for that. It's like, is it the name of the mathematician? Generally, it's the name of the people or where the university developed that. I don't know why it's called PMC, honestly. Monte Carlo algorithm there for or solver. But so in Octane, the highest grade for it's basically the bi-directional solution, which makes a more realistic render, and it's slower. Okay, it's the slowest option actually, the PMC in Octane, but it's the best. So it all depends. If I want quality, I'm going to run to Luxcore. If I want quality, with a free render engine, I'm going to run to LuxCore because it has all the features, and we're going to see, okay, something also important. The camera in Octane has a lot of options that you don't have in other render engines. And some options are interesting because you can make the vignette effect, and you can also make let me see, the bloom effect. I think there is the bloom effect in Octane too. But by example, in LuxCore, you have the vignette effect and the bloom effect already plugged in. You can in the camera, so you can directly get the small foggy light around the very strong lights. And here we have vignette, and I think there's also the bloom effect. I'm not talking about compositing here. I just composited the denoising in some software, which is also okay. The denoising in Octane is really good. It's really good. It's fast and really good. Good quality. It doesn't remove the, which wouldn't be with the denoise node that I made through composition here. But anyway, so the effects like bloom effects, vignette effects, you can have that in Octane and you can have that in LuxCore. So that's why I was talking about quality. If I want quality with speed and free, I'm going to run to LuxCore, okay? Because we're gonna have a very high quality at a nice speed. I'm not saying that LuxCore is the fastest renderer. That would be totally wrong. But it's also totally wrong to say that it's the slowest. I don't know. I've seen some videos here and there, and LuxCore was really the slowest render engine compared to all the render engine, talking V-Ray, Corona, Cycles, and all of that. In many scenes, LuxCore is faster than Cycles. And I'm also talking about, in some occasions, CycleX. So I don't know, if you don't know how to use a render engine, don't make a comparative between render engines. It should be obvious. So I'm not saying I'm no expert. I'm no expert in all of these, not even in any one. I'm good at Cycles, I'm good at LuxCore, I'm good with Octane. I'm not even good with Renderman. But I know that you should not compare render engine just with these speed. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. First, the feeling. Let's talk about the feeling I'm using. So Octane, good feeling, nice quality, very nice nodes, very high quality renders. Speed, good. It's really good, but a bit slowish here and there. And we have many options for the camera. Something weird is the mesh lights. You have to get used to that, because if you have lights in the scenes, they won't work. You need to create mesh lights and materials for each light, which is interesting also. But yeah, I do prefer lights, because the light source, because you can have IES or architectural light features, and they're very probably present in Octane, but I know they are, but you need to plug that in the material. But anyway, it's just a bit different, but that's not so bad. So I think Octane, you should try Octane. Honestly, if you don't know Octane, you're going to love using Octane. Okay, so now let's go out of Octane. So Octane approved. Octane is totally approved. It's totally approved for using with Blender at professional level. I do use it a bit less. I could use it more, but it's a bit slower and it just uses one GPU, but it's free. So anyway, then let's go with let's go with Renderman. So Renderman, okay, let's talk about the versions. Renderman is working with version 283. No, sorry, 292, which is good. That's why I was interested in using Renderman. One, because it's very famous for being the Pixar render engine. The Disney now, it's the Disney render engine. So many very famous movies were made using this software. Okay, so Renderman ring spin test. So actually that's the scene. This scene I developed entirely in Blender for Renderman first. That's what I did. The ring is designed in 3 Design, the jewelry software, imported it here, and then I made the scene. Okay, so let's have a look here. Okay, so Renderman is pretty interesting because it has its own, you can make a render, just now I think it's running the render system. Maybe it's going to take some time because one of the downsides of having that many Blender versions on your computer is that it messes sometime with the kernels. And you know that compiling the kernels takes between 5 minutes to 20 minutes sometimes, depending the and who wait a second, why give me no, here it is. Okay, Renderman, I liked pretty much working with Renderman. The viewport update is a bit different, so you know you're working in Renderman because generally it starts like there from the center, but it's pretty good. It's pretty fast. The speed of update is but it's also a bit laggish. I still prefer LuxCore or Cycles because they're faster with the viewport update. But it makes a very nice preview. And so, okay, so we are in Renderman. This is version 2.92 of Blender, so that's pretty recent. It doesn't work with version 3.0. I tried. It was very frustrating at the beginning because no, it was not working with Blender 3.0 alpha. So I could, well, if I make geometry nodes jewelry and I make tutorial, I will be making more tutorials about jewelry and geometry nodes. But anyway, the subject is here Renderman and Blender. So also Renderman for Blender. So first, the bad news. The bad news is this is the worst news. Let's start with the Renderman for Blender. So it's great, but so Octane is free, and Octane is free for 1 GPU. Now, what's the worst news about Pixar Renderman for Blender? It does not work with the GPU. It works with the CPU only, and that's the free version. Okay, it's free. Renderman for Blender is free, but it does not work with your GPU. That's a bit disappointing, honestly. So, but the quality, we do have quality here in Renderman. Honestly, look at this. I like the lights and shadows in Renderman. They're the best. That's sure. The material, the metal, honestly, the metal look is really good. It makes really nice. Well, actually, the realism in Renderman is the fame level you would expect. I love the way the light works in Renderman. Because, well, basically that's why you're going to choose a render engine. Yes or no. Every render engine works with light rays in some way or not. So even if you have the same material, the same textures, and also because making exactly the same scene, that's something that I know some videos and people worked a lot more than me in making exactly the same scene through render engines. And yes, it's a lot of work, but I would say also it's not necessary because every render engine treats lights and bounces and materials in very specific ways. So even if you put the same settings, you're not really going to get the same results. If you're making water, metal, gemstones, if we take a look at this, we can see that we have all that many and okay, I did not make that much work effort on really getting, because we have 5 different renders, okay? But I did my job in making the scene look fairly enough the same. The worst one, and I'm going to talk about this. If you look at the color of the fabric in Prorender, it was impossible through nodes. It's impossible to get the same tone effect. Look at this. This is like blue green. This green is way too strong, and tweaking the lights in Prorender was not good. But now we're talking about Renderman. So here in Renderman, I loved the metal. Actually, the metal is the best looking through all. Even it's better than Luxcore and Cycles. In all the other renders, the metal always comes out a bit plasticish. Always a bit. This is Cycles, it's pretty good, but it's a bit plasticish. This is Luxcore, it's really nice, but it's still a bit plasticish. Here, it looks like a photo, like a picture, okay, of the real metal, because of the shine that Renderman, the realism. You can see that the math. Sorry, I don't. Voy a seguir en español. Yo creo que voy a seguir en español. Las matemáticas detrás de Renderman para hacer el realismo está ahí. Es súper obvio. Se ve la calidad de la luz y los materiales en Renderman. Y esa es la escena que me dio la inspiración para hacer el tutorial entre todos los sistemas de render gratuitos disponibles para Blender. Y Renderman es una de las nuevas opciones. Bueno, no está nuevo, vi que hay tutoriales, como que está ahí hace años. Pero lo que pasó es que salió la nueva versión que funciona con el 2.92 de Blender, que es reciente, y creo que esa versión de Renderman salió hace un mes. Y a mí me llamó mucho la atención. Y aquí estoy, y lo hice un domingo en la mañana, creo. Sí, era un domingo en la mañana, creo. Y me tardé un par de horas, fue bastante rápido. Entonces, bueno, lo único que no me gusta en Renderman para Blender, bueno, uno es que nada más funciona en el CPU, pero eso también para ciertos algoritmos de cálculo, muchos programas se limitan al CPU para el trazado de rayos, porque las tarjetas gráficas no son tan buenas para ciertas cosas de trazado de rayos, eso de todas formas. Pero bueno, obviamente una gran decepción en realidad, que no usa nada. Bueno, hay que pagar si quieren la versión que use las CPUs, pero hay que pagar Renderman. Pero igual, Renderman, vamos a ver, vamos a comprar Renderman. Pro upgrade, get a quote. Ok, bueno. $600. Bueno, no es tan caro. V-Ray cuesta como $700 más o menos, pero V-Ray para Blender no es nada bueno. Renderman para Blender no pagaría 15,000 pesos o 18,000 pesos mexicanos para esto. ¿Por qué? Porque está Luxcore y está CyclesX. O sea, no vamos a pagar algo que tiene de hecho menos capacidad. Y ok, trae un poco más de realismo y la luz sí. O sea, vean la textura de la tela ahí, mis telas dobladas, verdes, ahí bien bonitas, ¿no? Con el Displacement Map. Pero por ejemplo vamos a ver que el Displacement Map en Renderman no está funcionando como debe funcionar. Si quieren un Displacement Map en Renderman en Blender, tienen que hacerlo con el modificador de displacement. All right, let's come back to English now. Okay, so where are we at? We are in Renderman with Blender. So I was saying it only works with CPU. If you want to work with your GPU in Renderman for Blender, you need to buy a license. But well, for being the free version, I love the lights, really the lights. And that's the big difference here. Let's go see. Well, Renderman comes with the option that the render preview, you can make the render preview inside Blender, but Renderman also has a software which is called IT or IR. Well, first let's stop the preview. Let's go back to the gray view. We're going to go through the differences. So one of the main differences, the nodes inside Renderman, honestly, they are a bit crazy. They are a bit crazy. But we're going to see that in practice. And one of the worst things for Renderman is that there's not a lot of references online. If you go like Renderman material blender material nodes, you are going to find a couple of tutorials. But this is what I was talking about. It's because it's Renderman 24 or version 2.4. I don't really know. It's Renderman 24. Okay, so you are going to get some resources, but honestly, they're not so good. So that's one of the first problem with Renderman in Blender, the manual. But anyway, searching a bit, I was able to find just enough information to make the scene look good. Okay, so by example, just for the render preview, you can use IT, and when you go to IT and you go to preview, it's going to open another software which is called IT. IT stands for there's the abbreviation of something. Renderman IT. It's short for something. I don't remember. Is it opening? Okay, so it took all the time I was talking. Here it opens this window, and that's an option for Renderman. You can choose not to render the preview in Blender, and it's going to open the other software, which is there. But as we can see, it's pretty slow. Honestly, it's pretty slow, even on CPU. If you compare to that with Cycles on CPU or LuxCore on CPU, well, you'll see that Renderman is slow. So I'm going to close this because this is way too slow. And also it closes, it has some bugs, and one of the most famous ones is that when you close the render preview from outside, so you send the render to IT, which is the Renderman preview software or render software also, is going to crash when you come out. So I make the previews inside Blender and it's a bit faster. Okay, so now let's start seeing the differences for the light. So by example, for the environment, you won't really have a normal, just an HDR option here in the world options. And like I said, I'm running again the preview in Blender, and it's loading, and it's loading. And the scene is not very heavy, honestly. It has just like some millions, but I'm talking like 1 or 2 million faces, because it's just one jewel, and the floor, the fabric on the floor is one of the heaviest geometry in this scene. Okay, so this is Renderman. So the preview is loading in Blender. That's working pretty nicely. Okay, now the lights, you can see that we have a dome light. That I'm kind of used to that. I was not surprised to need to load a dome light to get my HDR in the scene. And the dome gets the intensity, the exposure, all the node settings, the shader, and you load the texture. Here you load your file, your HDR file. So mine for this is this image. This one is mine. Also for the light in the scene. And you load it on the dome, and that makes the HDR, by example, for the reflections on the ring. Okay, so that's pretty nice, because if you want to rotate the environment, well, you're going to rotate the dome. Here, my dome, by example, you can move the dome, and you can rotate the dome. The only factor actually is the rotation. That's something you are going to find in the manual. And you are going to find in the manual that the only factor that's affecting the scene from the dome is the rotation, which is fairly logical. Okay, then the lights. The lights are also getting nodes. They're also in the light options there, but in Renderman, almost all the menus are going to be different, and that's something pretty nice because obviously it's another render engine. But what I don't like is that it's not very intuitive because of the names that some options have. You have suddenly way too many options, which I understand. If you want realism, you need more nodes, more options, more tweaking. But then the problem is that you don't really have access to all that, all the effect it has. But that's the nice part also. Renderman, you can see that it's a very powerful render engine, and you understand why it was developed by Pixar, and you understand also why you get such quality in Renderman. But honestly, it's not that much accessible compared to Luxcore or Cycles or Octane. In order, I would say the most accessible is Cycles, then it's Octane and Luxcore. No, I would say Luxcore is first. But Cycles, Luxcore, then Octane, then Renderman. Never. So if you don't know anything about rendering, you won't like Renderman. Is going to be a huge problem for you because the settings, they're very like counterintuitive, and they have really weird. So let's keep looking at the materials. Let's go like at the gold. Okay, obviously roughness at 0. The Fresnel, you have options on that, scientific or artistic, just for the Fresnel on the metal, which is very nice. But then you have so many IORs that, well, for the metal, it's not just that important, because basically is make it roughness at 0, and the rest, who knows what these nodes do. And obviously reflectivity at white. Okay, so on the gemstones, you also have, let's say, normal settings. But so basically here I search what color was affecting the gemstone. It's pretty good. Well, in fact, it is pretty intuitive. The only thing is that sooner or later, let's say by example here, it says density. Okay, it explains a bit. That's for the shadow. But also like the front and back attributes. Then there's Fresnel from front and back, exterior IOR, energy compensation, surface modification. So to use Renderman, you literally need to study rendering in university. Now that's a joke. I mean, but because it's like just the second time I'm using Renderman, and I was already pretty happy to get this using Renderman. But by example, for the floor, there's something we can. So I did load the displacement. Here we have the displacement node for Renderman, and this the thing we can see is that let's put a higher number to show how the software is displacing the fabric, and we're going to see that it's not very well implemented yet, by example, in Blender. So I was a bit disappointed with that. Obviously, I had 3 gain for the displacement. Now we have 12. So what's going on is that we can see look how the geometry is affected and destroyed. It gets destroyed by the displacement node. We can see that the geometry is separating. And like I said, I'm no expert, but I saw a couple of tutorials. I read a lot about Renderman for Blender. So basically we are loading the texture. We are separating the RGB for the displacement layers, which is a scalar displacement. So you get each layer with the R, G, and B. And then that makes the displacement here. So the problem is that even following a logical structure for a displacement, you're not getting the displacement. So I'm not saying maybe, and very surely there's another way to properly make the displacement, but there I follow the manuals and that's what I'm getting. And I can see that this is not what I want. So what I did, I kept the displacement. So it is making some displacement, but not in the geometrical expected way that you would find in actually Cycles, LuxCore, and Octane are working very well with the displacement nodes. And in Renderman, something that it's not a legend, learning Renderman is a lot harder than, well, basically any other render engine. And it's understandable because it was developed in a, well, in-house by Pixar. So they have very specific names for all their nodes and all the settings. So that's good for Pixar when you're working at Pixar, because people explain you what to tweak, what to use. But then now that Renderman is available outside of Pixar, and that's great because, like I said, when I saw the way that Renderman is dealing with the metal, by example, and the light in general, the realism that you get with just one HDR, a couple of lights, because like I said, this scene has one HDR and 3 area lights. I love the way that Renderman deals with the light. It deserves the fame it has for realism. But also the fame that is really hard to learn, it's totally true. It's hard because there are many nodes and the name of the nodes is just too different compared to our normal render engine with, like I said, normal for me is Cycles, LuxCore, and Octane, which are the most used ones with Blender, and Eevee also, but Eevee it's different because it's more for a very quick real-time rendering, which is really good at. I will be doing more renders with Eevee. Honestly, I made some very famous tutorials for diamonds using Eevee, but that's another subject. Okay, so here we are. We're going to keep here with Renderman. So like I said, the lights, they are area lights. So here when we add, also the menus are going to change. We have some Renderman presets and things that we can use that are pretty welcome, because the lights, you need to use obviously Renderman lights if you want your lights to work. Okay, but also you can bring light nodes. So here I have a light which has the same orientation. It works very similarly there with lights compared to other softwares. We have the lights orientation, and we have nodes for the lights for the power here. And as you can see, like I said, you can see that Renderman is really complex just because of the amount of options, which generally tends to make the render engine more realistic, because you can tweak many more things inside the render engine, and Renderman has all that. By example, on the lights, I turn on the trace light path because I want the light to affect in the gemstone on the metal, especially in the gemstones. So also for the render, the integrator. So here it's the same. The normal one is the unified one, I think. Then the path tracer. And then you have many options to separate the different types of render options. And yet again, the slowest one is the VCM. And it's also because it's the bi-directional option. So here in Renderman, I did exactly the same that I would do with LuxCore, which uses the bidirectional path tracer or light tracer. And I search for the same options inside Octane. In Octane, it's the PCM, which is the bidirectional solver. And in Renderman, it's the VCM. So the name changes, but the concept is the same, that there are all CPU-based bidirectional solvers, okay? Which gives the best realism. So if you want the best quality, yes, you need to use the slower solver to get the best diffractions and refractions and reflections on the metal and the gemstones and the bounces around that, because most they do use global illumination, and you have more bounces and it gives you more realism from the default settings, okay? But then I looked around to search for the bidirectional tracers to have the best results inside the gemstone. So the results with Renderman, let's go back to the images. Okay, this is the result with Renderman. Sadly, and that's very shortly because of me, but it's all on CPU. This scene took 1 hour and 44 minutes on CPU. It's pretty good, but it had a lot of noise still. And then what happens is that the denoiser is really good, but there's something really bad on the rose reddish garnet tourmalines that I have around the central stones, the pear-shaped gemstones. When you look at them, they are not that sharp anymore. And comparing to all the other render engines, we can see Cyclex makes really nice and sharp gemstones. The bidirectional in Luxcore all CPU also makes pretty. It's also a bit unsharp there because it's on CPU. There on the path tracing with Luxcore, it's a lot sharper. Octane is pretty good. It's pretty sharp. Actually, the dispersion in Octane and the refractions are richer in Octane. So that's why Octane generally is one of the favorite renderers for jewelry. You can see the quality. Now this is Prorender. Prorender, actually, it's the worst available. I'm laughing not because it's against the software. I mean, AMD is making a lot of effort to bring a render solution to the people using AMD graphic cards and all of that. And also it works with NVIDIA graphic cards. We're going to see Renderman just after Renderman. So it's Prorender from AMD and Renderman for Pixar. They're all available for Blender. The problem I have with Prorender is the color treatment. The color tweaking, the color treatment. Yeah, the color treatment in Prorender. I'm not talking about Renderman anymore. Just a quick comparison here between the results. The lights and the colors in Prorender for AMD is very weird, honestly. But anyway, let's go back to it. So the only downside to Renderman in Blender is the amount of noise, the slow render with the CPU, but the quality is really interesting. The only thing I would like to make better in this render made with Renderman Sorry, Renderman. don't mix them all. So Renderman from Pixar for Blender is really good, but it has some downsides. It does not work. The free version does not work with your GPUs, and the amount of noise that the solver makes, and then what the denoiser makes, it unsharps too much. Well, in this case, the central gemstone is pretty sharp. It's pretty nice. But these side secondary gemstones, they're like they're like dull because the denoiser, and so yeah, I think that I could find a better denoising option in Renderman, because I think that the problem was more my usage of Renderman for the denoising and the render options. But otherwise, I'm very happy with the lights and the render quality. So it's an artistically interesting options. I will be using Renderman from time to time because it makes very nice dispersions and reflection and refraction. The metallic, like I said, the metallic look of the ring is the best one. It's better than all the other available softwares. You can see that the realism of the metal is the best. All right, so that's Renderman. But otherwise, for the nodes and all the options, it's not so nice. It's a closed software. You can very quickly detect that Renderman was created in-house, in this case by Pixar, many years ago, and it was done in-house because there's not many references, manual references online and all of that. There are some, and each time more, but anyway, it's really interesting. If you love rendering, you like Blender, you should try and to get your free. You need to create a Renderman account. Then you need to answer some questions. So it's funny because it's not that easy to get Renderman, but it's you go to try, then you go to try for free, then you create an account here, then you answer some questions. Why are you going to use Renderman? What's your business? All of that. Then you create your account, then you're gonna get the links to get the Renderman. Also uses a server, so you need a Renderman server, and then the Renderman for Blender, which is an add-on, but you need the version 292. From version 293, Renderman is not working. I tried, and that was very frustrating. So that's why I had to install all these versions of Blender, because like I said, Octane has its specific Octane branch for Blender. Then I have Blender 292 for Renderman. Okay, now we are going to go with, so I already talked about Octane, and now I talked about Renderman. Honestly, Octane is way better than Renderman for speed, implementation, the nodes, the quality of the nodes, the speed. But Renderman, even if it only works as a free version with your CPU, is very complete. And the way it works with the lights and reflection, refraction, and dispersion is really nice. Really, the realism you're gonna get. And like I said, this is my first render. This is my first scene developed for Renderman with Blender. And this is what I get. I'm totally a beginner user of Renderman for Blender, and this is what I get. I was quite amazed, honestly. Even if I'm sure that many nodes are not properly set, but that's pretty nice. And render time on CPU of 1 hour and so, 1 hour 40 minutes, that's pretty normal. That's not that slow, in fact. So it's an interesting option. Renderman, yeah, approved. Really, it's approved. Actually, I approve a lot of things because every render has specific usage. So okay, so next, Prorender. So Prorender is from AMD. Prorender for Blender. So turn around, Blender, AMD. So you go there. This one is a bit easier. Okay, so this is version 283, and this is the same scene in Prorender. Okay, so here we need first to, oh no, too bad. What did I do? Obviously, let's go to preferences. Let's go, because I need to turn the add-on Prorender, but it's turned on. Okay, so why am I not getting? But this is what happens when it's live. Why is, give me a second. No, it can't. Okay, sorry. Okay, that was something very important, and it's not too bad that it happened live, because I'm explaining many things. Okay, there's a problem you're gonna get with Prorender, and this is, it's not activated even if it's installed. We need to run in administrator. So we need to go here and properties, and we need to go option advanced, execute as administrator, applicate, applicar, acceptor. Okay, let's run it again. I hope that was the only problem. Because it's fun to use Prorender. Every time you use another, come on. No, it's not loading. Why not? It says it doesn't have permission. No, it's not turned on. Turn on, please turn on. Did I click? Yeah, I think it's loading the Prorender. Radeon AMD Prorender in Blender. Are you going to start again for the live video? Please do. It did! Okay. So, first frustration or surprise you're gonna get, Prorender, you need to run it as administrator. If you don't, you won't be able, it's going to say a lot of Python error in the Blender console. It's going to say permission denied, access denied, and you're going to think many wrong things. And I had that problem when installing Prorender, and sadly it's bad because it's not so good. Prorender is not so good. We're going to see why. It's my least favorite available now, but it's worth it. It's any render engine free available is going to be interesting. That's why I went and tried Renderman, and I think Renderman is amazing. So it is really great that they're bringing Renderman to Blender. The version 24 is working with version 2.92 of Blender. That's great. Now, Prorender from AMD is working with version 283. So that was the first problem. First, I could not make it work because I was trying to make Prorender work on version 3.0 alpha of Blender. That's logical. We're going to use the best option available. All right. So first, I had to find what version works with Prorender, and it does not work after version 2.83. So thanks to, obviously, the Blender Foundation, it's really easy to find all, no, not the Blender Market. Today we're going to blender.org. Okay. Downloads, you can find all the versions. Where are you, all the versions? There's a link. Okay, here, previous versions, and you can find all the previous versions here. And I went here and downloaded the version Blender 2.83. Okay, so first you have to find what version is working with Prorender, and it's all the versions before 2.83, which is not so cool because we're already at version 3.0 alpha with Blender, and Prorender does not work with the latest version. So Even Renderman, and that's why I was saying Renderman is working with version 292. LuxCore is LuxCore 2.6, which is the newest LuxCore implementation, and that's also something that I was talking about last week's, because there's that video saying that LuxCore is the slowest render engine. I think that did not use LuxCore 2.6. I think they use very probably version 2.4, which is a lot slower, because something very important with LuxCore in the recent years, starting last year from version 2.5, LuxCore is working a lot with the GPU in the latest and the newest versions. Obviously, if you're using versions 2.4, well, it's a bad idea. It's a bad idea. LuxCore, the newest versions of LuxCore and version 2.6 is the fastest one. It's every time it's getting faster. So now, obviously, because they've been ridiculized in some video from a very famous channel, they are very probably going to try and optimize even more LuxCore, but LuxCore is working with GPUs and in the recent versions. Obviously, if you use LuxCore version 2.4, back then it was using OpenCL and LuxCore was not that fast. Okay, but Prorender. So Prorender from AMD, from Radeon cards, is working with Blender, and it's pretty nice. Honestly, it's pretty nice. The nodes are pretty nice. The settings generally are quite logical. They're pretty well implemented. Okay, so here, like always, we have a HDR. Where are you? Is the HDR not loaded? Or why not? Now we have a texture problem. Let's try to load the HDR again. So here we have very... Ah no, it's on... what's that object? Okay, so here we have some texture issues. Let's go back to the camera. So what's nice about Prorender? First, it's free. Okay, it's not that easy to install. Now let's have a look at why my texture is not loading. Let's have a look at the preferences. Are we working on... Ah, here we are. Okay, so I don't know for what reasons my texture in this scene were not loading. Okay, so the only problem in Prorender is the problems with the colors. Just let me load the materials again. Ah, I know. I think it's because it was not loading properly. Okay, Prorender in Blender has some issues, honestly, because by example, the ring has 4 materials, has the white gold, the amethyst, the diamonds, and the garnets. And the problem is that multiple materials on the same object in Prorender for Blender is not working. You can find that online. Many people have that problem. And that's very weird. I mean, to have multiple materials on the same object, that's something very common. Okay, here the only thing is I'm loading the materials again because the plugin, the Prorender plugin for Blender was not loading. So I need, this is weird also. I mean, I need to plug all the materials again. Okay, why not? It's a bit deficient. Okay, but for the rest, it's pretty good. Honestly, for the rest, it's pretty good. Let's, I think the depth of field is also not loading pretty well, or too well here. But otherwise, I have the same settings. I have 3 area lights, 1 HDR environment, and it's delivering pretty well. Even if the preview is pretty fast, but if you look at the sample, the size of the samples, it's making this is not because of the depth of field. This is because the preview in Prorender, well, comes out like that. The sample size is, well, it's what it is. Obviously, let's try to turn it to a higher grade. And also the denoising is, well, it's not the best denoiser you can find, honestly. But let's, again, it's a very nice effort. So that's why I'm not laughing at the software or like that. It's for Radeon cards. Surely on Radeon cards, it could maybe work better. But like the preview quality, but let me load all, and let's make 8. Okay, that's pretty good. So let's work with both GPUs. Well, let's say that Prorender for Blender needs a lot of updates. And then the only downside, honestly, here, the displacement map is working pretty well. That's a good point. But now the colors. Oh man, the colors. That's something crazy inside Prorender. So like I said, for the fabric, this is my texture. Okay, so this is the picture for the fabric, which I obviously tweaked the hue value inside the softwares with the nodes. So normally the hue goes from 0 to 1, and you have the color of your texture of your file, the normal hue value or the tone value for your image is at 0.5. This is true in any software. I mean any software, like not talking just about 3D softwares or render engines. This is true in Photoshop, in Corel, in DaVinci, in any software. This is a standard. Hue goes from 0 to 1 or from 0 to 100%, and at 50% you have your normal image hue. This is standard in the entire industry. I mean, but in Prorender, it's not like that. In Prorender, if you go at 0.5 here, we're gonna get a crazy color. There you go. So that's fairly okay. That's fairly the color of my original file. But when we want green, generally the green starts at 0.6, 0.7. Okay, so logically, when I was making the scene in Prorender, I put the same number, which was like 0.65. At 0.65, you know you're going to get something yellowish or greenish. What happens? Nothing. Okay, then I said, okay, maybe let's go at 0.85. At 0.85, normally you're already back to purple colors for the hue. But here in Prorender, at a hue of 0.85, I'm almost at the same status than my original image. We are a bit more, so this is the original image, but we're almost at the same hue than the original. Okay, this one is a bit more cyan than the original, but that's crazy. And then I started searching, and I said, oh, maybe in Prorender we can use number higher than 1. And yes, you can. And yes, you can. And the problem is that the color treatment is very different in Prorender. And I think that this is something that's wrong. That's basically wrong. It's something that should not happen. That's something you should not do. There's no justification for doing that. I'm sorry, AMD. I'm sorry there, but even if you guys are very cool, because you do a lot of graphic cards for gamers and all of that, that's great, and you're competing with NVIDIA, but there's no reason to make the color treatment of the textures that different in a render engine. Okay, so then I started seeing that, yeah, Prorender is lacking in many areas. If you see the light treatment, the speed of the preview, it's fairly understandable that it's not the best option you can get for free. I mean, you get Octane for free. Okay, it works only with one GPU, but even Octane with one GPU is faster than Prorender. Even Renderman on CPU is better than Prorender on GPUs. That's just to tell that there's something. And this, look at the preview. Look at the denoising in the preview. This is bad. This is, honestly, this is not so good. So, talking about render engine for Blender and at the professional level, and actually this is the only one I'm going to dislike. This one is not approved for professional. You're going to lose your time, honestly. Even if you have an AMD card, if you have an AMD card, go and use LuxCore. Actually, so that's why. Prorender, well, the nodes are pretty good. Okay, it's pretty fast in there, but the quality is not here. You won't get the quality for the colors, the realism. Okay, but this card, Prorender, is not good for professional usage using Blender. Maybe on other platforms and softwares, maybe they're more up to date, but Prorender for Blender is not good at a professional level. You're going to lose a lot of time. Even Renderman on CPU is a lot better. Okay, so now let's go to my favorites. Let's go to CycleX. And we can see, well, I know I did not tweak more the color because it was almost impossible to get that same greenish yellowish color. And yeah, I had the problem too much. The render, well, the Prorender render is pretty good, but the light treatment is too poor, is way too poor, and the software is way too slow. There it is too slow, and the quality of the denoising is not good. And if you look at the metal, it's very far from the metallic look that, by example, Renderman gives that metallic look very quickly, and that was amazing. So I was fairly disappointed in all the effort I had to make to install the Prorender and make it work, because first you have to find the version that works, which is 283, and then you need to run it as an administrator, and that's weird. Anyway, okay, so CycleX. So the scene in CycleX, it's this one. Okay, so obviously the fastest option is CycleX, so starting version 3.0 alpha, and that's great. And also because you don't have to install more than just Blender, and it's a lot easier. The displacement works very nice and all of that. The only downside to Cycles, if you want to decide, is that the dispersion, the refractions, and the caustics, well, they're not really here in Cycles. So the realism that you can get in Cycles is fairly good, but remember that in Cycles, you always need to cheat the system, which is good because you are going to find a lot of tutorials, a lot of people that are going to answer your questions on how to make fake dispersions in the gemstones and all of that. But Cycles is not is not really set to be a bi-directional solver, and we are going to have less realism in the gemstones especially. But nonetheless, this is Cycles, and this is very fast now because it works with the GPUs and the CPUs, and is going to use all your hardware. So that's pretty nice, and it's free. Okay, and I kind of like also if we compare the results from, let's close all of this. Okay, so this is Cycles. This is very sharp. Also, you get very quickly, you get rid of the noise, and the denoiser, the open image denoiser inside Blender is just amazing. It's the best one for jewelry renders. But okay, so here I did put some fake dispersions in the diamonds and in the gemstones. All right, so one of the strongest points of Cycles is the speeds of CycleX and the mature node system. You have a lot of nodes and you can do a lot of things with the nodes. And by example, the displacement node on the floor is working very well. Like if I let's make the displacement node stronger here on the floor. You can see it in action very quickly. Let's make it even way too strong, and we can see, we are going to see some spikes. No, not even that, it's pretty good. So the displacement node in Blender is working wonders. It's really making what you expect. And the only one that compares with that is Octane and Luxcore. Okay? So now the only reason to discard Cycles for professional jewelry rendering is the lack of Caustics and Dispersion without tricks. So generally what I do sometimes is that I render the gemstones in Luxcore and then I composite over the render made with Cycles. It's one of the best options. Okay, so now obviously last but not least, my favorite all time, and let's explain why. And I'm going to show why it's wrong to say that Luxcore is the slowest render engine. That's just wrong. It's something, yeah, it's plainly wrong. I don't know how they made those tests. Well, no, I know they say how they make the tests, but it's basically that you can't really open a render engine and just hit F12 and expect to have a good result. It does not work like that. So, okay, so in Luxcore, so here I chose the slowest option, which is the Bi-Directional Solver. But look at this, even that, look at the viewport update. That's fast, that's good in a professional environment. And that's where you see if the render engine is fast. It's in the viewport preview. If it's fast in the render preview, you know that the software is fast for the render too. Because this is what I want. And actually Luxcore compared to Octane, compared to Cycles, compared to Renderman, compared to Prorender by example, the viewport preview is fast. And that's what I need the most. First is to have a fast and a quality, because also the denoising is nice. I can also turn it off in Luxcore. But it's faster than Octane. It's not faster than CycleX, that would be obvious. But here we have a bidirectional, and look at the amazing refractions inside and dispersion inside the gemstones. You can, if you're a jeweler and you know gemstones, you can see that the diffraction, dispersion, and refraction and reflections on the metal, on the gemstones, it's at a very professional quality level here in Luxcore. Okay, so when I say that Luxcore competes between some of the best render engines available for, well, not just for Blender, around in the 3D industry. I say that because I use Luxcore every day, almost. And when I see a tutorial or a video or a comparative, and that LuxCore comes at last in the speed section, I simply just don't know what version of LuxCore they use. This is version 2.6, which is the most recent LuxCore version. But starting version 2.5 of LuxCore, they programmed it for the CUDA NVIDIA cards, and it's way faster. And you can see the viewport. Look at the viewport. Okay, Cycles is even faster, but remember, this is bi-directional tracing. It's the best you can get for gemstones. So then you can go to path tracing, which is also fast. It's even faster because the bi-directional, here it's a bit slower, but I'm very probably have to, okay, yeah. And let's turn on but it's making the denoising at the same time. Okay, the light tracing is turned on. So in this scene, the light tracing is not doing a lot. Even it's not making anything, in fact, just a lot. Okay, actually the light tracing, you can see it just at the beginning here. You see on the black, over the black, around the things, that's the caustics. That's the light tracing. It's very low in this scene, because to get the caustics working, the full effect in LuxCore, actually let me show you. All right. Okay, no, now, so let's say I finished the subject on comparing. So all the free available render engine for Blender. So I compared. This is AMD Prorender. It's free for Blender. It works with Blender 283. Now I started all for Renderman 24, which is free for Blender, but only works with the CPU, but really makes very realistic renders. Actually, I was very kindly surprised, even if the speed is not there, but the quality is really there in Renderman. AMD is not approved, honestly, at a professional level. It's not just the color and lights in Prorender. They're really deficient. It's not good at all, and it's not even fast. Then Octane is amazing. The only thing that Octane lacks compared to LuxCore is the caustics, which now I'm going to show. Then LuxCore and Cycles. So LuxCore has the highest grade for quality. It's LuxCore and Renderman, honestly. Then Octane and Cycles. For true speed, you need CycleX. For quality, you need LuxCore. Okay, so what's lacking in other softwares that LuxCore does have? So the other software that have the caustics just like LuxCore is Keyshot and Lumion. They're not that many, okay? So this is fast light tracing, and you can see. Now I'm going to show why I love LuxCore that much. And okay, that's me at an artistic level. I know that many jewelers don't really care. So that's a lion I sculpted. I finished it last week. Actually, it was done during a sculpting class for a student of mine from Chicago. So this lion was entirely sculpted in Blender. And yet again, I say that sculpting in Blender is amazing. I know that the favorite is ZBrush. But sculpting in Blender, this is entirely sculpted in Blender, and it's amazing. Now sculpting with Blender is really honestly working at a professional level. I sell my models, I sell my assets, I design many things for many different clients, and I use Blender for sculpting every day. It works with the tablet. Sculpting in Blender with the tablet is just amazing. All right, so now LuxCore, and here it is. You can see the caustics because this scene is tweaked in a way that we can see all the power of LuxCore and the fast light tracing. And you can see the viewport update is just amazing. So yet again, people saying that LuxCore is slow and that is the slowest render engine, well, they just know nothing about LuxCore. They don't know how to use it. And I'm just talking, these are basic, these are the default settings. But meaning that when they made their tests, they made it wrong with LuxCore. They just did wrong with LuxCore. The tests were not properly made. I don't know what settings they used. They said that they used the default settings, but that's something you would not really do anyway. Okay, so now the only thing that we don't have in Octane or in other, like in Light Tracer or other software, or in Deep Image or in Renderman even, or in Octane, like I said, or in CycleX. Okay, this is the scene without Caustics, okay, which would, Cycles would give exactly this, or Octane would give exactly this, or Renderman would give exactly this. Because, well, it's very easy to find the same settings between those softwares, all right? But now, let's turn on the light tracing, which is the fast Caustics from LuxCore. And here it is. This is the reason why LuxCore is superior, because you get those fast Caustics and light tracing. And also if you want, and this is the path tracing. So we can see the caustic metallic reflections on the lion. Let me just show you the one of the okay, so this is the resulting render made with LuxCore, and we can see the caustics. They're just amazing. So obviously when you make car renders, architectural renders, let's say product design render, jewelry render, I will keep saying that there's absolutely no better option than LuxCore. And like I said at the beginning, because I'm about to end this video, this live stream, we're reaching the end pretty soon. But here, this is one of the best render engine, and it LuxCore. And this scene is 4K. So this scene is 4K, so I can zoom in. Look at the beauty of the caustics. It's just amazing. So obviously I use the caustics at an artistic level. I know that many of you, many professionals, they just don't care about these details. They say it's a waste of time, but honestly, this render of the lion is just supreme. And only LuxCore can give me this. And that's because LuxCore has caustics, metallic caustics, light. And that comes because it has a light tracing system, and it's an unbiased render engine. But thanks to that, well, obviously some, I think V-Ray has that, Keyshot has that, Lumion has that. But like I said, let's go back to the beginning. Like I said, the question was, which is the best render engine? The best render engine, based on the research I've made, is Lumion. But the problem is, well, if you're a student, you are going to get Lumion for free. But if you want to know the price of Lumion, there it is. The Pro version, 3,000 euros, which is like 4,500 US dollars. That's a bit expensive for a render engine. Now, we have LuxCore, which is free. LuxCore is just, it's very easy to install LuxCore also. That's why I prefer it. LuxCore is a plugin. You go to LuxCore, LuxCore render, you go to download, you download the Blend LuxCore version, which is the add-on. You go to your Blender folder directory here. So this one is working with 293. You go to the 293 scripts, add-on, and here you load the Blend LuxCore add-on, and then you load it in Blender. So it's really easy to install LuxCore. It's really an add-on for Blender. Okay, the other softwares, some are add-ons, but many are not. Like Octane is not really an add-on. You need to install and register on Autoi to get Octane for Blender. Renderman is not an add-on. You really need a specific version, and also you need to register for the Renderman server. So many things. So LuxCore is even simpler. It's one of the easiest install for Blender because it's really an add-on and it's free. So well, I wanted to make a point about that. Working with LuxCore is amazing. It's the best quality you can get. Okay, it won't be the fastest of all the render engines. I'm not saying that, all right? I'm talking about the free options for Blender. And there is a couple of, I think there is Corona for Blender, but this is something I will do. Does Corona work with Blender? You can, okay, it's a third party, and yeah, okay, you need the Corona standalone. And actually I did not find it. I tried to find a Corona standalone for free. I did not find it. I mean, I looked for it about half an hour. I did not find it. I need a bit deeper research for Corona. Corona is a pretty good render engine. Okay, who's better, Corona or... Yeah, V-Ray is way better. So generally, the most popular render engine is V-Ray. The best render engine is Lumion. But the best render engine for free available for Blender is LuxCore. There's no doubt about that, all right? And, well, just because look at the quality of the results. All the Caustics reflections, you won't get them with any other render engine like that. Octane does do that, but not that fast and not that well. Renderman does that also, but also not that fast and not that well. Cycles and Eevee don't do that. Well, you could trick that in Cycles, yes you can, but nonetheless, it won't be that realistic. So, I'm very glad I was finally able to record this video. I was going to make it, well, I made it exactly the way I wanted. I think this stream came out very well. Also judging by all the people that join me now. So always glad to see my channel growing. I've been posting less tutorials lately because I don't have time, sadly. I did not, and I still have to go on holidays. I want to go to the beach in August. Honestly, I'm very tired because I'm working a lot. But the message was, and today's tutorial, because it was a type of tutorial. I've shown all the options. And I said it all started because Renderman 24 came out for Blender a couple of weeks ago, and I was very intrigued to finally try the very famous Renderman by Pixar for Blender, and I was not disappointed. Honestly, it's just CPU, okay, that's a bit disappointing, but the quality of the render was really, really cool. And yeah, if you have questions now, go ahead, because we're ending this. And anyway, also in the comments, you can post all the questions that you want. So I was comparing Renderman. It all started. This is my first render with Renderman for Blender and for jewelry, and it works. I was happy to see that it works because Renderman has dispersion, has some caustics effects. Yes, yes, exactly like what I was saying. Let's go back to the original. Well, for gemstones, Octane is also very good, honestly. So that's why I'm saying let's compare here. Let's go through. Okay, this is Cycles is very good. LuxCore is very good for the gemstones. So actually, this is LuxCore on GPU on path tracing. This is too saturated. This render is not good. This is LuxCore but with bi-directional render, which is slower and on the CPU. LuxCore is amazing for the gemstone. Look at these gemstones. That's really nice. The dime's really nice. Now, if we go to Octane, Octane is pretty nice, but you can see, well, I could tweak the scene a bit better for Octane, but the light in Octane also is not very mature yet because we don't have that many. In Octane, by example, the lights need to be mesh lights, and that gives less options for the light ambience, and that makes that. But Octane is very good for dispersion and for gemstones. So if you don't need the caustics, it's true. Octane is a very good option, and that's what I said during the entire stream. The best options for rendering, and not just jewelry rendering, also architectural rendering. So the best options are CyclesX, Luxcore, and Octane. Really, if you, and when Renderman is interesting, but it does not render on GPU. So it's interesting for learning. If you love rendering, you should learn Renderman on Blender. It's really nice. But at professional goals, you should learn Luxcore, Octane, and CycleX. You won't lose time working with those three softwares. The only problem of Octane, well, Octane you could buy a license or subscribe. Okay, so I think I covered the entire scope of these render engines. And like I said, every render engine uses a different version of Blender. So Prorender, which is the worst available, uses version 2.83. Renderman, which is a very nice surprise, even if it only works on CPU, uses version 2.92, which is a nice version. LuxCore 2.6 works very well on Blender 2.93. Octane is at version 2.82, I think, but that's specific to Octane. It's not from the Blender Foundation, it's from Octane. And CycleX works from Blender 3.0 Alpha, and CycleX is really nice. So Blender is, you can see that Blender is gaining a lot of interest from the entire field of the industry, like video games, movies, product render, because all these render engines are available, and that's great. So to make it just like the final statement and end the stream is like I said, if you like rendering and you have free options at professional level, go and learn to use Octane and LuxCore and CycleX. All these three engines are very well and mature render engines for Blender. Octane has the best quality for the nodes. It gives a very nice quality to the textures. You need to live that. You need to use it to understand that. You need to experience that, because if you're used to Cycles, many people say, why should I use Octane? I mean, what a waste of time. No, it's not a waste of time. The nodes, the effect of the nodes, the procedural nodes from Octane are amazingly implemented and give very nice results on the texture and on the renders. And LuxCore is just amazing for the realism of the algorithm use and the caustics, the fast caustics. It's really easy to set up, and it really compete in speed at a professional level. So yet again, if you saw famous people or famous videos or tutorials saying that LuxCore is not fast, that's just a mistake. That's something stated by people that don't know how to use LuxCore even at the most basic settings. Making default settings, it's a wrong methodology. You should really live the way you work with the software, the way you can use it in the viewport. And as you saw, because that's what I wanted to show, the speed of CycleX, Octane, or LuxCore, you can see that LuxCore is really fast in viewport update. And that makes that it's really a pleasure to work with LuxCore. And when you look at the results of LuxCore as a render engine, it has speed and quality at an amazing level. And that's why I wanted to make that, not only because I love LuxCore, it's very obvious that I love LuxCore. I'm a LuxCore backer. That's true, okay? I paid money for LuxCore, but they totally deserve that. The team is very nice. The forum is really nice. But the speed also is really nice. So it means that the quality of LuxCore is, it delivers at a professional level. It has all the settings that you want. You want bloom effect, photon maps, all of that, caustics, all of that. LuxCore has it, and at a very good speed. So no, LuxCore is not the slowest render engine. Okay, so I made my point. I showed the different free option with Blender. It was a great day because I wanted to do this tutorial for like 3 weeks. I'm basically almost 1 or 2 months late. that's the point, because I have too much projects going on. I'm working now to create NFTs. You know, that's something huge, because we need to find new ways to make money in NFTs. Many people told me because they love my renders, so I'm going to make NFTs obviously on sale on Ethereum, on OpenSea. I think I'm in the process of doing that. I'm going to try. Obviously, it's also an investment. Even for many people, NFTs are a big fraud, but it's a new way to make money for artists. And because I'm already selling assets and they're selling pretty well, and because the world is changing, and luckily I do have quite many clients for designs. They pay me jewelry designs. I make the models. I have quite a few clients. But anyway, if you need a 3D modeler, I'm generally available. People pay me through PayPal and or Western Union also. And also, if you need some type of assistance or a coach or training in Blender or in 3D design, you can pay private individual classes one-on-one with me, which is obviously a huge experience because, well, I've been teaching for almost 20 years now. Well, 17 years. So why I say 20? I don't remember. I've been making jewelry for 20 years. And I've been teaching jewelry for 17 years. So anyway, that's the end of this live stream. Thanks for joining. The message was that LuxCore is not the slowest render engine. It's the slowest if you just don't know nothing about LuxCore, but it's one of the best render engine. And we have many free options of render engine for Blender. The nice surprise is the Renderman 24. Octane is very good. CycleX is amazing. And LuxCore also. Anyway, be nice to people, be nice to animals, be nice to the planet. Take care. Get vaccinated if you can, if you want. Many of my friends are getting vaccinated. Many people I love are not getting vaccinated. It doesn't make you a good or bad person if you want to get vaccinated against the COVID pandemic. Anyway, sadly, in many countries, the economy is slowing down again because the third wave. Here in Mexico, we are the third wave of the pandemic, so everything is closed again. And nobody is investing in nothing or buying much thing. There are not really much people outside many people stay in their home. Many people are getting sick, even if many people are getting vaccinated. So it's a disaster once again, thanks to the pandemic. But that helped me find the time to make this new this stream. Well, thanks to the members of my channel. Remember that the members get assets every month. If you have questions, and well, now generally I wanted to do this as a normal video tutorial, but I don't have time to edit. It's a lot of work to edit some of my videos, and I'm sticking to the success of my channel, which is long videos, very complete videos to talk about many aspects of what we're doing and what the softwares are capable of, and comparing things. So obviously I'm going to keep making tutorials with Blender, geometry nodes. It's amazing what we can do in jewelry with the geometry nodes, with the render engines, with 3Design version 10, deep image for 3Design. And I'm going to keep that the same way. And actually, when I can do it live, I'm going to start preferring making it live. All right. So thanks for joining. It was amazing to be able to talk about all of this. Thanks for your comments and all your support. And well, this is it for today. So take care and see you soon.